Imagine a city that was the lifeblood of Rome, a crossroads of cultures and trade where the fate of an empire was decided every day. And then imagine that this same city was swallowed up by time and silence, only to re emerge as a perfect time capsule. Welcome to Ostia Antica, not just a pile of ruins, but the beating, indomitable heart that fueled the greatness of Rome. Today we'll take you on an unforgettable journey to discover how this extraordinary place, located just a stone's throw from the capital, was more than just a port, but a vibrant universe, a complex ecosystem where lives, goods, and cultures intertwined. Here, every stone, every mosaic, every street tells a story of frenzy, ambition, and a legacy that still speaks to us today. Get ready to walk through the streets of a true imperial city where the past is palpable and the breath of history is everywhere. This is not just an archaeological dig, this is Ostia Antica, a window into the Roman world that rarely gets to be explored so closely. Think about it. Rome was the empire, the political, military, and cultural center. But without an efficient port, without a constant flow of goods, Rome would have been just a giant with feet of clay. And this is where Ostia comes into play, the economic lung, the channel through which the empire breathed. It was not a city like the others, it was the port city, a living and noisy organism built for a single purpose to serve and feed the caput mundi. Every single hour, every day, the port of Ostia was a hive of activity. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the creaking of the ships docking, the din of the carters, the shouts of the sailors mingling with the voices of the merchants. There was not a moment of quiet. The waters of the Tiber, then navigable and vital, were traversed by hundreds, thousands of ships, an infinite fleet that arrived from every corner of that vast empire that extended across three continents. Imagine these ships sailing often stormy seas, laden to the brim with riches, necessities, and luxuries. Where did they come from? From everywhere. From Egypt, the granary of the empire, came the most imposing ships, the so called ration ships, filled to the brim with golden grain. Without that grain, Rome would have starved. It was the daily bread of millions of people, the pillar on which social stability was based. But it wasn't just food. From the quarries of Greece and Asia Minor came gigantic blocks of white veined marble destined to be transformed into majestic statues, imposing columns and sumptuous floors for temples, basilicas, and patrician houses in Rome. Every vein of that marble told of an incredible journey, an epic from the quarry to the construction site, and then from the most remote corners of the Orient, following the ancient caravan routes and sea routes, came spices black pepper, cinnamon, saffron, exotic aromas that transformed Roman cuisine, that perfumed homes, and that were as precious as gold. Every ship that docked was a world landing in Ostia, a piece of the empire manifesting itself here in this unique, extraordinary logistics hub. Everything converged here, and everything was destined for a single, glorious destination Rome, the eternal city whose needs and ambitions were inextinguishable. And how did the lives of ordinary citizens unfold in this melting pot of activity? It was a vivid, chaotic mosaic, an explosion of life that never stopped. The vast majority of the inhabitants of Ostia were not wealthy patricians with sumptuous villas, but ordinary people sailors, dock workers, artisans, small traders, bakers, innkeepers, bureaucrats. They lived in what the Romans called insulae, the ancestors of our modern apartment buildings. Think of buildings that could reach up to 5 floors with small, sometimes overcrowded apartments where entire families lived together in cramped spaces. Imagine the constant noise, the neighbors' voices, the smell of food rising from the kitchens, the chatter of children playing in the internal courtyards. Life was dense, intertwined, and the stories of thousands of people intersected daily within those walls. But the true magic of Ostia unfolded in the squares. Each square was a cultural melting pot, a place where the whole world seemed to meet. Here, Persian merchants with their precious silks discussed prices with Greek colleagues displaying fine ceramics, while Egyptian traders negotiated the sale of papyrus and incense. It was not uncommon to hear several languages spoken at the same time. Latin, of course, but also Greek, Aramaic, Semitic languages, and African dialects. It was a symphony of sounds, an explosion of colors and scents. The squares were the beating heart of exchange, not only of goods, but also of ideas, stories, and different cultures that met and influenced each other. The atmosphere of Ostia was pervaded by the intoxicating scent of spices, the salty smell of the sea, and the inviting smell of the food cooking in the countless taverns. Taverns, or copone, were not just places to eat and drink a glass of wine, but real social and business centers. Here, agreements were made, trade routes were discussed, news was exchanged from every corner of the empire. They were the equivalent of our modern cafes, but with a Roman energy and noisiness. People played dice, listened to travelers' stories, and ate a hot meal after a hard day's work. And for entertainment, there was the magnificent theatre, an imposing monument that could accommodate thousands of spectators. Comedies and tragedies, mimes and dances were staged here, offering a moment of relaxation and reflection for everyone, from the humblest to the richest. The theatre of Ostia was not only a place of entertainment, but a thermometer of the city's social life, where festivals were celebrated and perhaps even the most important issues were discussed. The city's rhythm, its energy, its very existence were dictated by economics. Every ship that departed or arrived, every commercial transaction, every nail hammered by a craftsman contributed to turning a gigantic economic machine. The true heartbeat of Rome, its true economic strength, lay not only in the sumptuous palaces on the Palatine, but here, in the noisy docks and crowded markets of Ostia. The wealth generated by this incessant movement of goods and people was immense. It came from the trade of grain, oil, wine, marble, slaves, exotic animals, from logistics, with thousands of men employed in transport, storage, administration, from craftsmanship and with workshops that produced everything from amphorae to ropes, from lamps to clothes. This wealth did not all remain in Ostia. A significant portion, in the form of taxes, tributes, and luxury goods, flowed uninterruptedly towards Rome. It was the blood that nourished the capital, allowing it to finance its legions, its mammoth public works, its spectacular games, and to maintain its status as ruler of the ancient world. But do you know what the most surprising, almost ironic aspect of Ostia Antica is? The fact that its very ruin, its abandonment, became its greatest treasure. Imagine that this city, so lively, so indispensable, began to slowly decline starting from the 4th 5th century AD, not by sudden invasion or violent destruction. No, the problem was much more insidious. The silting up of the Tiber, the river, a vital artery, began to deposit sediment, making navigation by large ships increasingly difficult. At the same time, the surrounding areas became marshy, turning into hotbeds of malaria. Gradually, trade moved elsewhere, mainly to Porto, a new infrastructure desired by the emperors. The inhabitants began to abandon the city, seeking their fortune elsewhere. Ostia, the glorious port of Rome, was slowly swallowed up not by flame or sword, but by mud, malaria, and silence. A cruel fate for such a vital place. And here lies the twist when the wonder that allows us to be here today. This slow and silent disappearance, this oblivion, has paradoxically preserved the city in a way that few other Roman places can boast. Not having been continuously inhabited and rebuilt like Rome itself, Ostia remained frozen in time. Beneath layers of earth and vegetation, time has stood still. What we can admire today are not just fragments, but entire sections of an authentic Roman city. The streets, still paved with the ancient cobblestones, are there, with the cart tracks still visible. The shops, with their counters and signs, seem to be just waiting for the merchant to reopen his shop. And then there are the mosaics. Entire floors of incredible beauty and detail depict the trades and corporations that animated life in Ostia. You will see mosaics showing ships, lighthouses, fish, but also images of those who sold grain, those who worked wood, those who managed the baths. These mosaics were not simply decorations, they were like today's corporate logos, the advertisements of corporations, the calling card of an entire economy. There are temples dedicated to different deities, a testimony to the multiculturalism and religious tolerance that reigned here. Temples to Jupiter, to Ceres, but also to the Persian god Mithra, to Egyptian deities, all coexisted in this global port. Walking through the streets of Ostia Antica today is an almost surreal experience. It's not like visiting a museum, it's like entering a time machine. You can touch the walls, feel the history under your feet. You can imagine the conversations, the noises, the smells of 2,000 years ago. It is a miracle of preservation, a jewel of the past that has been returned to us intact or almost. He is a silent witness to a civilization that flourished and then faded, leaving us this incredible legacy. Ostia Antica still captivates and amazes today, a place that reminds us of the greatness and fragility of every empire. It is an invitation to reflect on how cities are born, thrive, and then, sometimes disappear, leaving us with precious lessons. It is not just an archaeological site, but a living history lesson, a place where the past is not past, but is present, vibrant, and ready to tell its infinite stories again. If this journey through time has fascinated you, don't miss our next video on another wonder of the ancient world.